So look under the community news, and look under the community news.
Okay, I'm in there.
There's a way to get notifications.
I see it now. It was yesterday.
Yeah, so basically we try and figure out what we're talking about a few days before the weekend, and then we try and keep it relatively on point there. So last time Kelvin talked about off-box automation, and before that I talked about on-box automation, and today we're just going to mostly focus on Ansible.
That's nice, man.
And then we'll go from there. I was thinking about doing Puppet as well there, but kind of had a thought that it's a little bit too different, so we might have to do that next week.
Yeah. I think like Ansible is getting very much getting used in enterprise.
Oh, very much so, yeah. Alright, so you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
And just a reminder to everyone, if everybody could just mute their mics while Don's talking, that'd be great.
Okay, will do.
Alright. Usually I'm a bit more... Oh, we're not talking about Juniper today. That was another stream. New. Okay. So, today we're going to be talking about Ansible. And what this is going to be used for is configuring your network devices in more of a consistent manner there. And this is going to be something called infrastructure as code. And this is part of the whole DevOps thing. So the idea is that rather than have all your random configuration files and whatnot, you define your configuration in something like Ansible, and then it will take what you're trying to do and then implement it there. So it's kind of the predecessor to what we call intent-based networking now, where we're not saying if we want a VLAN, we want to type switch port access VLAN, whatever. We're just saying create a VLAN, and I don't really care how you do it. So in Ansible in particular, everything is connected with SSH. There is no agents or anything like that, so that's why it's different from Puppet. Though Puppet is annoyingly changing how they do things there, so it's they also have agentless ways of configuring things nowadays. Because there's no agents, we have a server which runs all the code there, and we have to define everything in what's called an inventory file. Because in Puppet, the agent will register itself to the central server, so it knows about it, but because there's no agent, we have to tell Ansible exactly how to reach our hosts. And then we need to tell it how to connect in here. And then lastly, we create what's called a playbook. And the playbook is where we have the various instructions that we want to implement. So the actual configuration is written in a language called YAML. Now YAML is not in the CCNA itself there, but you're asked to understand how Ansible works, so it's a good idea to spend some time with it there. We'll have a look at it as we go there, but the main difference is that it is a way of writing your code, but it uses spaces as marking there. So that means if I say something and then underneath it, I need to have the exact same spacing here if I write something else. If I have a difference in spacing, it's going to break. Also, if I use a tab, it will be bad. It will no tabs in anything YAML. Alright, so that's the basics of it. So what we need on our devices is pretty simple, because all it is just connecting from an SSH session. So all we need to do is just make sure that we have SSH enabled. and we need to give it a user pass so that we can log in with the user session. So just to get things moving on my hosts, I have 3 routers. Excuse me. Excuse me there. We have 3 routers that are just connected in my VMs. I was going to use CML, but I decided this was just as easy. So if I... Oh, there it is. So basically I just have 3 routers running, which we're just going to be using for the Ansible portion. And then next week or so we'll have a look at some other switches for doing that there, but we're going to focus on Ansible today. So basically all I have here is some routers that are connected to each other, and then I can do whatever I need to do there. So all we do is create a username so that we can connect. So I just do Ansible. I give it privilege 15 so we don't need to worry about enable. And then I just give it a lab password, which if you know your OSPF, you know what that is, except for it's misspelled because I thought of this password a long time ago and I'm too stubborn to fix it. And then we just make sure that our AAA is good. So all I do is just say we're using the user local logon and we're honoring the authorizations so that we don't need the enable password. So what I'm going to do is just open this and do that. Okay. So this is my handy dandy editor. And what we do here is there's several files that we care about in Ansible, but not a lot. So if I open up my Epic Pen, where is my epicness? There we go. All right, so there is 3 main files that we care about in Ansible. There is the Ansible.
Hold on. I don't see ink and I don't see an editor. I'm still seeing secure CRT.
Oh. Did you guys not see my whiteboard stuff earlier?
I didn't either. I thought no.
No, I did not.
Oh. Probably could have stopped me a little bit earlier there, but okay.
I thought there would be a refresh. If that was going to fix itself, I apologize.
All right, let's just take it from the top then. Let's just... I'll brush through the other stuff.
Also, Donald, are you recording this to put it up on your YouTube channel?
Yep, and I'm not going to edit it, so all this boomerism is going to be right there for people to watch. So they'll get. Well,
let me say for the record then that I think Donald Robb is amazing.
There, thank you. All right, let me try sharing this again. Let me go change windows. Oh, I did the application off the screen. All right. All right, now we see a screen.
It looks like VS Code but something better.
All right, cool. All right, let's just let's see if I can get lucky here. Yes. Okay. All right, we're just gonna gloss over what I did here. So,
I just see the blank screen, just the blank.
No one's.
Hey, Donald, you're good for most people though. If you can't see the screen at this point, the whiteboard, just reconnect.
Okay, cool. All right, so if everyone's okay. So just to rehash what I was drawing there when I thought you guys could see it, we're talking about Ansible. It is infrastructure as code, which is part of DevOps. So basically how it connects to things is with SSH. And then because there's no agents or anything like that, we need to define an inventory file. And this is just going to explain how Ansible connects to the devices. And then we have our code in playbooks. It is written in YAML. It is a way of expressing code. It also doesn't. It also is very anti-tab. Uses white space to figure out the next sections there, and tab will break it completely. Likewise, if you have an incorrect spacing there, we're probably guaranteed to have some kind of issue there, and I'm probably going to mess up something when we're doing our demo there, so we can see what's going on there. Okay, so that's more or less what I was trying to convey. The other thing I was trying to convey was...
Is that line by line, or how's that?
Yeah, we'll say it as we go.
Okay.
Okay, so we saw the secure CRT stuff, right? Before?
Yeah, it was up for a long time.
Okay, cool. So you're just staring at nothingness for a while. Okay, got you. All right, so this is where I was. Okay. So what I was trying to say is there are three main files with Ansible that we need to care about. There is the Ansible CFG. And what this does is this is basically your global settings for the solution. So all I'm doing here is defining the defaults. And I am disabling host key checking. Because otherwise, Ansible for security is going to make sure that you know the SSH keys of everything you're connecting to. Which is great for security, but if you are running like a lab, you're not going to manually import all those keys there. So it's best to turn this off with this string. And then the deprecation warnings there is that Ansible's a little bit paranoid, so if there's going to be a feature going to be removed 10 versions from now, they're going to start letting you know now that, by the way, if you use this there in 20 years, you might not be able to do this. So so it's good to turn these off there if you're familiar with what they're saying, because otherwise you're going to run a script and it's going to have 50 different warnings for things that you don't really care about. So I like to turn that off when I'm doing demos and whatnot. So, I don't know what that kid thing was, but if you guys can mute if you're not talking, that'd be great. Alright, so what we need to do is we need to work on the host file, and there's two different ways we can do this. I'm just going to show you the simpler way. And what we do is we use the INI format. So we define things by first creating a group, and then we type in the IP addresses of my routers here. So I can do it one of two ways. I can say 81, 82, 83, or I can use wildcards. So I can say 1 through 3, and that's going to be the same thing as writing out all the devices there, and this is going to make it more friendly if you have a lot of devices you're connecting to. So,
Question.
Sure, go for it.
Can you do nested grouping as locations as?
Yep. You can, if you wanted to, you could say routers and then switches, and then you could say all devices, and you can call routers and switches. So you can group them together however you want to. Well, no, I meant all devices, but you got the idea. But we're going to try and keep it simple for today.
Thank you.
All right, so now we have our IPs. We need to tell Ansible how we're connecting to it. So what we can say is routers, and then we say vars for variables. So this changes from version to version as they iterate things, but for the most part, what we want is we need to tell it how we're connecting. And this is going to be network CLI, which basically just says we're connecting with a network device. And then we need to give it our username and password, which in my case is admin. And actually, I created Ansible. And then Ansible SSH pass is going to be my misspelled Dijkstra, because it's supposed to have a J somewhere in there. No one knows where, but somewhere. And then we tell it what operating system that the switches are. And the old way of doing it is you would just type iOS. The proper way of doing it nowadays is cisco.ios.ios because they're trying to make things more modular. So either one works, but I'm just going to type it the proper way. And that's all we need here. So I'm just going to upload this remote file. And then what we're going to do is just hop over to my server. And we can do a quick sanity check by saying Ansible ping routers, if I can type, routers ping. And it's going to complain because I didn't tell it where the inventory file was, so I have to say -i hosts. So what this is doing is this is actually just making sure that things make sense and that it can talk to the local host, not these guys, but the Puppet server itself. I'm actually using Puppet for funny server reasons, because I did a stream with Jeremy IT Lab on Friday, and I tried to use WSL for Ansible, and I ran into a bunch of issues there, so I moved it over to the Puppet server. But they do different things, so you can put them all in one box if you really wanted to. But anyway, so that works fine. So now we can try and figure out what we want to do. So if we look, there is a built-in list of all the modules that Ansible supports, and you can see there's quite a few. So if I was to pipe this into WC-L to see all the numbers, we can see that there are 5,423 different modules that are built into Ansible, and that number goes up pretty much every time they update the solution. So they have a lot of built-in support. So if we want to see some Cisco stuff, we can say grep iOS. Yeah, we can see we got some Fortinet in there because they annoyingly have that too. So we're just going to say cisco.ios. And we still have too much, so we're just going to say let's make it a little bit smaller so it fits. There we go. All right, so what we have here for iOS is these guys here. And in fact, I'll just grep on this there so it's easier. .ios. There we go. So what we have is a bunch of built-in things. So we can see that if we wanted to add an ACL, we can do that. If we wanted to run an arbitrary command, we can do that. If we wanted to add an interface, we can do that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to try adding a loopback. So we can see how we run this by going and typing the actual module name. And it's going to give us a scary looking document that will explain how to do various things. So if we scroll up to the top, if I scroll up to the top, I can find the top, there we go. So it's going to give us the various things that I can type in there. So if I want to add like the duplex, if I want to add this or that, the name of the interface, of course, and so on and so forth. So if I look at some examples, we can see that this is a little bit different than what we work. I lost my spot. Where was I? There we go. That's what I get from messing my reviews. So what we can see here is that we define things in a way that's different from iOS, because what we have is, like, instead of saying no shut, we're saying the interface is ooh, that's too big. I like my Epic pen, but sometimes it has a mind of its own. There we go. So what we have here is, instead of saying no shut, we're saying we're enabling the interface there, or we're not enabling the interface. So you can see that we're not really typing the Cisco commands anymore. We're using these modules to implement the configuration, and the idea here is we're trying to make things more predictable and consistent across our network there, because we don't need to keep track of the various syntax and whatnot. So what I'm going to do is we're going to start working on a file, and we're going to copy this. Clear out what we had there. So when we start out with Ansible, the first thing we need to do, or a YAML file rather, is we need to have 3 dashes there so it knows it's the YAML file. And then what we do is we say dash hosts, and we tell it what group we created, which, if you remember, was called routers. If we look over here, routers. And then by default, it is going to want to collect a bunch of information. We're just going to say no to that for right now. So we'll say gather facts no. And then we start building our tasks. So in here, what I'm just going to do is paste our example so that we don't have to type a ton. And we're going to get rid of this guy. And we're going to say that this is actually loopback 222, whatever. We'll fix the name and I'll explain what we're doing here. So we're just going to say creating loopback interface. And description's fine. We'll just say created by Ansible. Alright, so what we did here is that we have created a task, and basically Ansible will do this one line at a time. And it will basically say that we're creating this task. We're calling this module. And if we look at our help, you can see there that we have, it tells us the structure of how it wants things and the various options that are available to us. So we'll go back over to Keith. And what we're saying is we're creating loopback 222 with this description, and it's going to be enabled. Now you notice that, I don't know if this comes across in the video very well, but you can see that this has these little lines there, and these are meant to help me with my spacing, because if I mess this up, it's going to throw an error. But so everything has to be nice and uniform for this to work. We'll play with that a little bit later. What we're going to do is upload this. And then we're going to go over to here. And I'm going to say Ansible Playbook is test. And I need to pick our host file. So when I run this, what I should see is apparently I have a wrong password on one of the routers here. But if I look, we'll come back to that. But we can see that we have loopback 222 on this guy. But we don't have an IP address yet. So we've created an interface just by running a playbook. Apparently, oh, I never created the username on here. Okay. We're just going to do this. Do show run username and there. Good enough. Let's go back over here. We'll just do this here just in case. Alright, let's try that again. There we go. Looks like 2 is still angry. Let's just see here. What's my configuration? Oh, I still have ClearPass enabled, which is Aruba network access control. So let me just clear up this stuff. We'll say no. By the way, Notepad is your friend for these kind of things. No. Authorization local, authentication local, and alright, you should be fine now. Oh no, it did. I was just being impatient. Okay, so this highlights another interesting thing here. So if I look at these guys and I do a view show run in loopback 2, we can see we have our interfaces created on all 3 routers. But the difference between Ansible and something like Python is that there's a concept called idempotency. And basically what that is someone going to change something that needs changing. So it always has a predictable result. So we can see that when I run this, because I have already ran this earlier, it's not going to try and create the loopback interface again because it's already at the desired end state. Whereas these guys, because I had the authentication error, they are running now. And if I run this again for a 3rd time, we're going to see that nothing should change. And the reason why is that one of the big principles with infrastructure as code there is you want to have a predictable end state there. And if it pushed create an interface, I don't really care, it's going to cause unpredictability, because what if I said I'm going to push like a Apache web server there and that wipes out all the configuration there. So it's just going to say it's already installed, I don't need to touch this. So now that we have that, we can expand it a little bit. So if I go back to my thing here. So if we want to say that we actually don't want the interface enabled, we just type false here and upload it. And then if I run this again, we see that they're changed because we have a difference. If I look here, we should see that, oh, that's the wrong one. We should see that the interfaces are down because I just told it to shut down. So again, we'll put that back up. So we have an interface, but we don't have any IP addresses. So what we'll do is we'll go back to our handy dandy guide here. And make that a little bit smaller. There we go. And what we can see is we did interfaces before, but we see we also have layer 2 interfaces and layer 3 interfaces. So they try and make this more modular, or interfaces I meant to call it. So the idea here is that this would be your layer 2 settings like VLANs or whatnot. This would be your physical settings, and this is your layer 3 settings. So I'm going to copy this and go Ansible doc, paste that in. And this is, if we look up here, going to help us do things like add an IP address. So we're just going to copy the first snippet here, and we're going to go back to our handy dandy editor. And I want to make sure this is in line. Actually, I missed name. We're going to say adding IP address. Paste that in. And then we're just going to say that this is loopback 222. And we'll give it 192.168.222.1/32. Now we don't have to do the traditional subnet mask here. This is going to figure it out for us. We're just going to put this in and we're going to see what that looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and upload that, and then I'm going to run this again. So what we should see is that the loopbacks are going to be enabled again. And we're going to be adding the IP address, and we see we changed 2 things. Oh, someone's talking there. Okay. So if I look, we now have an IP address added to it. Now there is no now I put the same IP address on everything there because I'm not doing any concept of looping. I am just pushing that IP address everywhere. We'll talk about a couple things there, and then maybe we'll talk about how a loop works. But for the main part there, it's going to put whatever you want here. So we'll just add a couple other things. So let's just go back to here. And let's just see if there's any other easy things we could work with. But you can see you can just build out your playbook as you go by grabbing what you want there. And then when you get more advanced, there's more ways we can structure things. So if I wanted to, let's look at NTP. That's always important if we have time for it. So let's grab an Ntp example. And same idea as everything before. We're just going to look and see that we have a quick little summary of all the different things. We can see that we're using that network CLI that I mentioned, and that we have all these different options that we can use. So we're just going to grab a practical example, and this is more just for sanity's sake, but we're just going to go ahead and grab this. I don't want to go that deep. We're just going to grab the top one. At first, I'm just going to make a point. So if I wanted to add an extra space here, and then I'm going to try and run our command again. That's enough to break our script because it doesn't understand extra spacing there because it is how it figures out what the next line is. So if you see weird error messages like this, and the help on Ansible is pretty terrible for the most part there, but you can usually figure out what's happening. If we go back over here and we put this back, we can see that it's happy again. And by the way, I do recommend running if you have a lab environment, whatnot, testing things as you go there. You don't want to write a 1,000-line playbook there and find out you have an issue somewhere, because that's could be a waste of an afternoon. So anyway, we're just going to go here, and we're going to add another name. We're going to say name is adding Ntp servers. And we can see I messed up my spacing here, so we're just going to go enter. And we're going to fix it on the fly. So we're just going to go ahead and add this, and we're just going to use loopback 222. I don't really care if it's a real server or not. And we're going to go upload. And we'll run this again, and we should have Ntp servers if this worked out all right. So if I go back over here, we should now have Ntp. Now, a difference between Ansible and Puppet is that when you do something in Puppet there, it's going to make sure that your configuration doesn't drift, and it's going to make sure that you always have this Ntp server defined here. Ansible doesn't care. It's not going to check on this to make sure it's accurate. So if I go ahead and say that I'm going to remove it from this host, it's not going to know until you actually run it again. So if I run this again, we can see that it's going to go ahead and force it there, but it's not going to keep track of everything until it's ready to go there. So what we'll do is
Can I ask one question?
Go for it.
Wondering when you're writing in PyCharm, the files you're writing, are you actually uploading to the Ansible machine?
Yeah.
Yes.
So if what I'm doing here, just for convenience sake, is I've connected to my Ansible server. This is what the remote host is here. Here. So basically what I've done is I've defined the SFTP things there, so I connect to the server, and then I edit the files directly on the server, and then I just use this little move this out a little bit. Then I just use this little upload button. I can do it automatically or whatnot. I just don't want to go for the effort, but I do it this way because it's much easier to work with this than it is to work with the files like Linux gives you.
Okay, I get it now.
Cool. All right. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna try and do a simple. Lost my train of thought. Give me one sec here.
You were doing the NTP change.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just like YAML, I'm very easy to get thrown off script there sometimes. All right, so now what there is a script, this is pretty much just ad hoc. But anyway, what we have is we can see that we're building this out there, and there's different ways we can break this out so it's more modular, but we won't get into that. What we'll do is we will work on making this so that we have different IP addresses. So what we want to do is we want to say that this is actually a variable and then one more, we want to say that we are looping through our files here. So if I didn't mess anything up, we should go upload. And then if I try and run this, it's not yelling at me, that's a good sign. Oh, it's yelling at me, that's a bad sign. Okay. Let's just see what we've done here. Okay, so I'm going to work my script a little bit, but you can see here that we have, it's picked 3 there, so let me just look at this for a minute. Did I mess this up? Of items. It's not like the quote. When you do any kind of automation stuff, it's always good to keep in mind that you're going to be messing up as you go there. That's why it's always good to be testing out what you're doing, hopefully not in production. Okay, there we go. That looks better. Alright, let's see what that did. So if I look here... I think they changed the behavior on this. Let me just try this. I go back over here, and I'm going to say this is loop. Do. And we look, I have three. Okay, not quite what I was expecting there. They changed the behavior of this somewhat recently, but just give me 1 sec here and we'll figure something out. But long story short, we don't really care about the IP address. I'll come back to that. But the main part of the story is that let's get rid of this and let's put this back to here. Is that we can build out these playbooks there, and then the idea is that we can use these to add things in there. So if I wanted to add more devices, I would just add more hosts. We can grab more information, we can run commands and get output if we want to do more compliance auditing. But with that, anyone have any questions for him or for the time being?
Is there a test or a dry run?
There is actually. So you can go help. We look, there is. Just trying to find it in the help thing for you. There was one. Oh, check. Check. That's what I meant. Check. And basically this will just tell you what it would have done. So if I look here, it's still 3 even though I put it back to 1. And then if I run this, it should put it back to the .1 there.
And you can get like a unified diff of the changes it will make, kind of like Salt, or?
Yeah, you can do a diff, so there is a, I think it's actually just diff. So right now there won't be any differences because I just applied this. But I could go back here and we'll just say this is 2. And we'll try running that. And actually, I haven't used the diff in a while. I believe you save this, and then there is a way of doing a unified diff, like what you're saying with Salt. It's not quite as good as Salt. It's a bit more functional there, but has that functionality. It is the right command, right? Oh, this is, yeah, so that was my bad. So the diff is more for if you're working with templates, which is a more advanced feature of Ansible, but not for the actual playbooks. So I'm just going to try this one more time, because I'm certain I had that right. So we're just going to go ahead and say that this is item. And then under name, where's my fruit line there? There we go. So under here, we're going to say loop. And then we're just going to say 101, 102, 103. Let's try this one more time here. Oh, I see. It's so the loop is working, but it's messing up the syntax here. So let me just try this again. Let's just see. Alright, so basically what's happening here is I have to look at the logic of what's changed, but essentially what's happening is it's applying all three to all three. So another way we can do this in a simpler way is we could just define what host we want. So if I wanted to, I could go back here and we'll just take out this loop stuff. I'll have to test that next time we talk. It's ironic that a loop is throwing me for a loop, but it is what it is. So what we can do is we can take this and essentially we can just go paste, and hosts is going to be because I never defined a host name, and we'll try pasting this here. This might not work, but we'll try it. Just like that. Copy you. Anyway, I'm not going to dig myself into a hole here, but the point is that the problem with the stopping of the script here is that it's not terminating properly, and I'll have to figure out why it was acting up there, but I don't want to dilute us too much in troubleshooting. But the point is that we can define our tasks as we need to, and then we just edit that as we go there. We can do this through several files as well if we want to, and there's a bunch of security options. Is there anything in particular you guys have a question about Ansible? But we got probably close to wrapping up here.
Does it scale and run well in like real environment?
Oh yeah, I've used Ansible on thousands of devices at once. It basically there are different ways you can deal with if you're. There are different ways you can improve the performance. Like if you notice when this is running, let me upload this and I'll run it again.
It's doing like one host at a time versus like a batch.
Yeah, so you can do parallelism there so that it will do batches at a time when you do it there. There's more structured ways of doing it there, like there's Ansible Tower, which is the enterprise version of Ansible that will let you do more version control and that kind of thing. And you can also make sure that certain people can only run certain Ansible scripts there, so you don't have to, or playbooks, so you don't need to worry about things blowing up. But I think that's probably as far as I want to go for this first lecture there. If we talk about it next time, we'll get more deeper into the looping and the templates and that kind of stuff there. Maybe Ansible Tower. Next time we'll talk about Puppet, so that we can see how the other side is. I basically what this is probably going to be is a spacing issue. So where it's looping through everything instead of just doing one item. So I'll troubleshoot that later, just so I don't drag everyone out. But aside from that, the main stuff works there. So remember, you need to make your, you need to give it some kind of login credential. So it needs some kind of access to the box there. You can also do and then as long as your SSH is working, you can do keys and whatnot if you want to get more advanced, but for labs this is fine. And then what we did is we defined the options there. If I turn this off, we get a lot. Actually, I'll show you. So go ahead and turn this on. And what should happen is if I run this again, making a liar of me. It depends on what you're actually running there, but if it hits something that's going to be deprecated, it's going to scream for like 50 messages that it's not there. But oh, I never uploaded. Oh no, I did. Anyway, so that kind of caught me off guard there, but it normally just gives you a lot of useful information if you're not deep into this kind of stuff. And then if I was to turn on this there, everything would fail there because I would have to manually save all the SSH keys for all the hosts, and that doesn't really scale well unless you have another solution in place. Just to wrap up, we'll look at some arbitrary commands. So if we go back to our list here, so we did some configuration stuff, but you can see that we can do things like static routes and routing and that kind of stuff there. But if you have something that isn't in this, you can run config commands, and this lets you just push arbitrary config. So for example, if I wanted to push an ACL, I could go ahead and push an ACL to it directly there. Let's just go ahead and the way this works is that we create the parent, And then we basically say that before there is no ACL. So we're basically going to remove the ACL, and then we're going to create the ACL, and then we're going to add all these lines to it. We also can do things like DHP helpers. Pretty much any command you can do, you can push. It's just going to do it there. Here's an example of a variable. So if I want to change the host name, I can do it to what's defined in the inventory host name, which is our IP addresses. And so this is a way of doing it there. What you lose is the you lose some of the flexibility there because you're pushing arbitrary commands, and that's not really what you want to do if you can help it. You can also run show commands. And what this will do is let you collect information. So if I copy this and add it in to here. So we can see that we're going to go ahead and run the show version command. So I'm going to upload this. And we'll run this again. And it's going to say, fantastic, you ran the show command, but you didn't tell me to save it. So what we need to do is we need to register the variable. So how we do that is we go back to our script here, or playbook. I keep calling it a script, it's technically a playbook. And we would say that we want to register, and we'll call this something like router version. So now we're saving the actual value so we can use it later. And then we need to have another task where we can say debug, and we can say router version. I'll paste this in. And let's see if we have any typos here. We do. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to have this as a task. So we're just going to say that it's going to be print output. And then we're going to say that we're going to print. Actually, I'll look up the help there before I get too deep into this. So you can also not just look up Cisco stuff there, but if I type in something like debug, this will tell us how to interact with the stuff there. So we see we can call a variable and then name the name. And then there should also be message. So if I want to type something, I could say I'm going to type it out this way. So we'll try both ways. And we can have conditionals too there. So we can say like we're only going to do this if a variable is defined or if some other criteria is met. So what we'll first do is we will just go var results. And we called this router version. So if I go ahead and do this, we now have our show version for each router there. Now you can see that we could have done this in a more graceful way because we're just kind of pushed there. So let's take something smaller. Let's go, let's just say that instead of show version, we're going to do show run include hostname. And we're not going to bother changing the rest. We're just going to go upload and then here. So we can see that we are pushing this out. Now we can also change this. So we can say that we want to do what I started doing, which is to say this is a message. And we could say the host name is, and then we'll say router version. And if the luck stays with me for just a bit longer, we should have something closer to what we want here. So we can see that we have our variable, but we have a bunch of ugly information there because we just grabbed the raw output and we haven't done anything to make it prettier. We'll talk about that down the road as we go, I'm sure. But that is the main stuff I want to show with Ansible. So we did some show commands, we did some configuration. We tried to do a loop, but that failed, but that's neither here nor there. It technically worked too well, it looped everything. And then we did some basic configuration, so we can see the whole thing here. And then we worked on this. So any closing questions for everyone? We can talk about this all day, but I think this is a decent primer.
I was kind of curious. So the libraries that they have, essentially what they're doing is they have logic to go in and parse the standard output, and then they parse it according to whatever the method or whatever the class of command is, like Cisco. And then they're basically just entering standard out, like an actual CLI command.
Yeah, so these are actually, or not these, all these are really Python scripts that run and they do a bunch of parsing. You can actually write your own modules if you have a need or you're good enough. In fact, if you do like a Red Hat certification for Ansible, what Red Hat makes Ansible, by the way, then you'll have to make your own modules to do your own thing there. But you could, let's just see if this works out for me. So sudo find
Just out of curiosity, what OS is that running?
this is Red Hat.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So if I go copy here, go cat. So this is basically this is more for the help side there. So it's not quite what I wanted to show you, but the point is that you can actually interact with these modules and you can edit them if you really wanted to. They're really just Python and some lower level stuff there. And you can actually submit them to Ansible there. If you go to something called Ansible Galaxy, pull it up here, Ansible Galaxy. This is a repository where people can upload their own Ansible modules. So someone made something for GNS3 apparently. Click on new. Apparently it's not the fastest website, but once it loads, it's going to explain what the actual module does, and I can choose to install this and use this in my playbooks if I want to.
Do you have your curious? Do you have anything on Ansible Galaxy yourself or no?
Not public. I have some private stuff for things, but not on Galaxy itself. But I have a ton of most of my repositories right now are private, but I might start doing more public stuff there, depending on how things work out. But we'll see.
Cool.
Okay, this page is falling apart here, but if I click it, I'll try one more time. I believe in this website. Oh, come on. I said I believed in you.
Here, let me try pulling it up in Edge.
Yeah, that's fine. I got Edge. I'll pull up Edge. Let's just see. Edge. You know, if a Red Hat site only works on a Microsoft browser, that would be hilarious. Yep. All right. So basically what you get here is it'll tell you how to actually install this module, and then it will give you the how you can get it going. And if I go README, it will explain what it actually does. So this is getting... So this is querying GNS3 to get some information. And so anyway, you can find what you want to do here. There's a bunch of stuff. You can see the offer, but you can absolutely extend Ansible to do whatever you need to do. And then typically you'll use Ansible in conjunction with other tools there. Like I use it with Terraform all the time. So what else we got here? Dynatrace. So this is an application monitoring solution. So this is going to control the agents. But anyway, that is essentially Ansible in a nutshell.
You did mention access control. I was kind of curious because you said you can control what the user can do, but does that restrict the commands that they can execute in the shell, or does that just execute or limit what paths they can do?
It's with a product called Ansible Tower. It's a pretty big topic, and I don't think my Ansible is running right now. Did I make it? Let me just see if it's there. Otherwise, we'll talk about it next time. Linux. Your OpenStack. No, so I'd have to remake it, but so next time I'll show you what it looks like there. But basically, it's the solution similar to Puppet Enterprise there, where you can define who's allowed to do what, and you'll have some more accountability. Because technically speaking, if I'm allowed to connect to these devices, I can run Ansible on my desktop, and there's no real accountability that I did anything there. But if we use something like Ansible Tower, then we can make sure that everyone knows that Keith did something or didn't do something, and just keeps things a little better. And it also integrates with like GitHub and whatnot. But it's a pretty big topic just for up at the end of the lecture.
I was just curious because it seems like shell is such a risky thing.
Yeah, so typically if you are doing this in the real world, you'd want to try and pay for Ansible Tower, or you would use the open source solution, which is AWX.
Can it work through sudo?
You can. So you can do it that way too. There's a bunch of different ways you can go. Like there's Ansible Vault, for example, which will let you encrypt all your passwords, and you have to be able to decrypt the passwords. Like there's a lot of different ways you can go. Like
HashiCorp Vault, is that what you mean?
There's actually Ansible Vault. You can of course use HashiCorp as well, but if I go HashiCorp Vault, this is actually its own little tool there, so I can go like create, and it's going to ask me for a password. And then if I wanted to, I could say password is Bob. And then if I wanted to view this, I would need to authenticate. And then this is how you do your password security for the basic stuff. And then we can edit as we go, and then I can reference this inside the reference this inside the actual scripts there, so that we have a lot more security. So there's a lot of different ways we can go, but we'll talk about that next time, I think. Anything else there?
That's pretty cool. Thanks.
All right, I'll wrap it up here, and I'll upload this boomerisms and all, including our not sharing the screen for 10 minutes, and on YouTube later tonight, and then you guys can relive the memory.
So we got planned next week.
It's Calvin's turns next week, so feel free to skip it.
Damn.
I'm not sure what he's going to be doing. We typically talk throughout the week, and then he'll basically we don't put a lot of effort into it, as you can see, but we'll basically just have a quick 5-second chat of what do we think about this and that, and just make sure we're not stepping on each other's toes. But he'll probably change gears and do something else, and then I'll kind of continue with the DevOps stuff like we've been doing there, because I'll talk about Tower next, and I'll introduce Puppet and that kind of thing, and that's not really his wheelhouse.
So Ansible's like the preferred solution in Cisco?
For network people, yes. The reason why is that Puppet, for example, used to require agents for everything. And if you had 1,000 switches, then that is a lot of work to get that working. Puppet has made it so they have more agentless options, so you can do a proxy and connect directly there. In fact, it's kind of funny there. I was looking at their website, and they said, "Why would you want to put an agent on 1,000 switches?" Like, well, that was your model for 10 years, guys. But okay. Anyway, that's there. Salt is another option. This is something that's briefly talked about in the CCNP. This works well for certain things there, but it's not quite as extensible as Ansible, because this basically relies on something called Napalm, which is more focused on getting information and doing basic changes there, but it's not quite as extensible as the Ansible stuff, I find. It's a little bit more annoying because you have to define the proxies and whatnot. Well, maybe I'll show you that one of these days. But Ansible is the winner for network administration stuff. Puppet is the winner for systems administration stuff, and I don't know why Chef is on the CCNA, but this is really for app development. And I think there's Fruit on there just to show the contrast, but it's not really something to write home about. In fact, it doesn't really even work with Cisco anymore. They kind of broke it 2 years ago, and they haven't fixed it.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised. It's like they threw Salt out and they picked up Chef. It's like it should be the other way around.
I think the idea was they wanted the abstraction because Ansible is the network one, Puppet's for systems, and this is for devs. And I think they just wanted to show the contrast them, because Salt and Ansible is pretty similar at the end of the day.
Yeah, I haven't tried Salt SSH, but apparently that's a thing now too. So I like Salt actually. I think I probably made a video or two on Salt back in the day. I can't remember, but anyway, that's that. I'll wrap it up here, and then we'll go from there. Next time we'll probably wrap up with some more advanced features in Ansible. So we'll do an advanced session where we'll talk about templates, where this is how you push more consistent configuration with something called
Jinja 2. And then we'll talk a bit more about how to break up the structure so that right now we have everything in one file, and we're going to break it up into a directory structure. I don't know what I'm trying to write here, but basically you write it up in a logical fashion there so it's much more scalable. And then we'll close up things. We'll maybe talk about Vault. I showed you a little bit here, but we'll do it in action. And then we'll talk about Tower. And that should be enough for another session. And then down the road, we'll basically do the Puppet. And after that, we'll probably do a quick Salt one. So we'll keep this train going. And then Kelvin, I think, wants to do more service provider stuff. We have to ask him. But that should be good.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was a nice intro.
All right, thanks, guys. See you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
No
Bye.
worries.